Alright everybody, I'm back. We're looking at Lesson 2, Part 3. Lesson 2, Part 3, Rec 250, Lesson 2, Part 3. We're in the note packet right now. We're going to be on page 3. Page 3 in the note packet. Alright, so in continuing talking about Outward Bound, Kurt Hahn, the philosophy of adventure programming, discussing these philosophies because we're looking at the leaders within these mediums. So when you're in a ropes course or you're in summer camp, you're a leader in these positions. The leaders are usually facilitators, having strong interpersonal skills. Okay, and are always developing their interpersonal skills. Interpersonal skills is in that character realm that is not your personality, but next to your personality or works with your personality, sometimes against your personality in ways, because your personality is sometimes can be unchained. Your outgoingness can get you into trouble. So can your introvertedness. Okay, and so there are times when your personality needs to be in check. That's kind of all over the place. But for more on that psychology, there's some good classes on counseling psychology that look at that. Okay, so looking at page 3. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about Outward Bound, the history of Outward Bound. Outward Bound, when it came to the U.S., had these long trips. Okay, they were usually 3-week backpacking trips, and they were led by facilitators. They don't really have the title facilitator quite yet, because we'll see where that title came from in a minute. But most of these people were teachers, counselors that weren't into that traditional setting anymore, and so they became outward bound instructors, taking groups on backpacking trips or long kayaking trips for 3 weeks at a time. How amazing, how much fun. This was very popular. Very, very popular until about the mid-60s. And we know this was popular. This is more than just for kids. This was for corporate groups, for adults. They had everybody, all age ranges participating in these outward bound outdoor trips, led by ex-teachers, ex-counselors in the facilitator role, which wasn't quite termed that yet. Okay. What happened in the mid-60s is that Jerry P.A., which is a son of the founder of the Minnesota Outward Bound School, this guy started to notice some drop-off in his clientele. Now, every business needs money, even the most best-run business that's out to help people still needs their funding. And what he was looking at is like, our trips are too long. People are saying that they're too long. They cost too much, okay? So there's too much of a time commitment. But they were concerned that if they minimized the trip in terms of its length, people wouldn't get the interpersonal skill development, the leadership development out of a one-day trip. How could you do that? Because in 3 weeks, think about it, if you were with a group of random strangers, maybe 14 other random strangers, for 3 weeks, backpacking, say, in the Rockies in Colorado. And in those 3 weeks, you're going to have all these interactions, and there's some going to be positive, some going to be good, or some going to be positive, some will be negative. The team develops, the team struggles, then they develop and they struggle. They kind of go through that cycle, which we'll talk about later in the class. And you've got rain and bad weather, you've got good weather, you've got some real fun, memorable times, then you've got some fighting. There's all these things that happen naturally in 3 weeks. And at the end, in 3 weeks, typically you have respect for everybody, and some people you probably like a lot. Okay? So Jerry was concerned about this. He said, well, gosh, if we shorten our programs, then we're not going to get the feedback. The people, and this is like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to develop one's leadership skills, because most people don't seek out, like, they wake up in the morning, hey, today I'm going to develop my leadership skills. It just doesn't happen that way. So they decided to start a project. They termed it Project Adventure, and they officially launched Project Adventure in Maryland in 1970. There were several folks involved, including a gentleman named Carl Ronke. kind of a strange guy, but very extroverted, but a strong interpersonal skill leader who had worked for Outward Bound, and they termed the coin facilitator. They made him the first facilitator. And what this project adventure was is they took all of the same ideals, the same components that you would naturally experience in a 3-week backpacking trip. Okay, naturally experience just by being together with people that long, because you're going to get on people's nerves. The group develops in that amount of time. For anybody that's been on an extended trip, you know what I'm talking about. So the Project Adventures decided what that was they're going to try to mimic that 3-week experience into 1 day. Most people within Outward Bound thought, hey, that's crazy. Okay, well, found out that it was very successful, and what they developed was a set of mechanical challenges to mimic the natural growth process that would happen in a 3-week time period. And these are called team building activities. And so a group would go through a series or an activity, team building activity after activity after activity for about an 8-hour process. And within that cycle, there were a variety of activities. There were games, icebreakers, initiatives. Okay, where people take initiative, they really step outside their comfort zone, can take a risk and initiate something. Problem-solving activities where they're thinking about, okay, so 15 people are given each a carpet square, and they'll have to cross an area of 50 feet, and you can only use a carpet square once. Problem-solving. They had to problem-solve. How do we do this together? And then there were the low ropes and high ropes activities, where they would put a harness on and do some climbing. They climb up a telephone pole, climb up a rock tower, and do various things where they were belayed or supported by the other team mechanically with a rope. And after this full day experience, the studies showed that they experienced similar feelings and similar leadership development as they did naturally through the 3-week trip that they took. That people would take backpacking or whatever through Outward Bound. So you have a whole new thing that was born, and what you have is term number 1 is facilitator, someone who leads the group from point A to point B, and then number 2 is adventure-based counseling. Well, what it was the facilitator had strong interpersonal skills, so they're almost like a counselor. Not in the traditional sense, sit down on the couch, let's talk. Okay, although good, this is much different. And so we're going to talk about that, and there's a summary of that on page 3 in your note packet. There's a summary on page 3 in your note packet. And to make sure you know what a challenge course is, because that's there is as well. And so that brings us current, okay, gets us up to now, where we're looking at what is a facilitator, okay, what are interpersonal skills, how do we develop those, okay, and so that we're very confident, we're very effective at being a leader. And so we're going to continue to look at this adventure environment. We'll look at specifically how the group develops, how the leader influences the group and doesn't influence the group, and a variety of other components as we go along. The last thing I want to say, the last thing I want to cover here is on page 10 in your note packet. On page 10 in your note packet. Okay, on page 10 is what we call the Adventure Wave model. And this is a good visual model to see what I'm talking about. You're manufacturing these activities, these experiences, okay? As a leader, you do this. And the group goes through these activities, learning by doing. Then you help them reflect on those activities. And then by the end of the day, they look at themselves and their group in a new light. Maybe some significant learning has taken place, some significant confidence boosting has taken place, maybe not. Okay. A great way to see this in action is to go to the ropes course that I told you will be available to you during summer session 1. So let's look here at page 10 and we'll talk about that. Actually, I'll come back and we'll talk about that. Okay.